new here, my name is Devin, and on this channel we talk about all things plants. And today's video is very exciting because it's finally spring. Yesterday, the 21st, I think, was officially the first day of spring, which seems like a long time coming just because winter felt long. Even though I live in a southern state, it just seemed long for some reason. So I'm so excited for springtime, and of course springtime means new growth, sun shines out longer, daylight savings has finally hit, which is the dumbest thing. We should just get rid of daylight saving because it doesn't make any sense and it just screws up everybody's schedule, especially people with babies. If you know what I mean, give me a thumbs up and we can commiserate on the changes of sleep schedule. Anyways, so with spring comes new growth, sunlight hours longer, the sun is brighter, and it's eventually getting warmer. And here in Georgia, we have spring for like this amount of time before the humidity and the heat sets in. So with that being said, I am going to be talking about how to prepare your plants for the springtime and kind of what I do to, refresh my plants and give them a new life, kind of recover them from winter. Yeah, let's just go ahead and jump on into this video. Before we get into the video, if you are not yet subscribed, I would love it if you would subscribe and hit that big red button down below. And if you like this video, give it a thumbs up. It really helps my channel out. And also you can follow me over on Instagram at Devin's House of Plants, and I will also leave that linked down below. Okay, so the first thing I like to do when spring comes is just kind of take an inventory of how my plants are doing. I've had a little bit of new growth start already just because I am in Georgia and it's got warmer a little bit earlier. So my plants have started kind of reviving themselves, and I do have grow lights, so some of them, grew throughout the winter time, but that does not mean that they don't need refresh or nutrients. So that brings me to my first tip on preparing your plants for spring is decluttering your plants. Look through, take off any dead leaves. Look at if they need repotting, check out the roots at the bottom to see if they're coming out, check your soil. If it's packed, condensed, you'll want to repot it, and just kind of take a closer look at all your plants, wash your leaves off, really give them a good shine, and get all that dust that has kind of collected over winter time just so, they can absorb as much sunlight as they can through their leaves. And don't be afraid to kind of prune back your plants as well. This is also another good tip to kind of prune back some of maybe the older leaves or leaves that just don't look as good, because it will actually promote new growth to the plants and kind of force them to put out healthier leaves. This is also a good time if you are pruning and you take a couple cuttings and just stick them in water. You can always repot them back into the plant later on during the season once they have grown roots. So tip number 2 on preparing your plants for spring is repotting. So I have so many plants that need repotting just because I bought a lot of plants last year, and I know a bunch of people did as well, just with the pandemic and ordering online, and just we're in our homes a lot. So a lot of our collections grew really big. I have so much repotting to do just because I purchased a lot of plants last year, and some of my plants in my collection are over a year old or even almost 2 years old that hasn't been repotted yet. So I know the soil is almost drained of all the nutrients from all the watering that I've been doing, and so it's kind of time to refresh and give that plant new nutrients, especially when they're trying to grow in the springtime. So I am planning on doing a video here soon on repotting, kind of repot with me, sit down and chat, kind of talk about how we repot and why we repot, and just kind of talking about plants in general. I'm wanting to answer any questions that you guys have, so if you have any questions, leave them in the comment below and I will answer them in that video. All right, so another tip for springtime that I kind of mentioned earlier is cleaning off your leaves. Obviously, plants photosynthesize, and the way that they receive the sunlight is through their leaves. So if they're covered with dust and stuff like that, then they're not getting as good of direct sunlight. I guess that's a weird way to say it. How I clean my leaves is I get a microfiber cloth and wet it with water and spray a little bit of neem oil on it, and it kind of acts as a little bit of a leaf shine, as well as it's going to kill any sort of pest or bacteria that has accumulated onto your plants. Like I know if spider mites and mealybugs are really attracted to dry, kind of dusty areas, so that's a good way to really inspect your plant to make sure there are no pests. The neem oil is really good to take care of pest problems as well. You can even spray this on top of all of your plant and in the soil as well to kind of help with like fungus gnats and any sort of mold that's growing on it. This I think is it's ready to use, so it's already diluted. You can buy the concentrated version of neem oil and then you just dilute it in water and spray it on your plants. And I found this the best and easiest way. It does have a very strong smell of garlic, so if you don't want that smell in your house, I would suggest doing it outside. That's usually what I do. I put it on the porch, spray it, leave it out there for a little bit, and bring it back in just because it gets really stinky. Another good cleaning tip is also cleaning your windows. It's something that we don't really think about. I don't really think about too. I heard this tip from somebody and I was like, that's a really good tip. It's just a good thing to kind of just, especially with like spring cleaning and everything going on, just to clean your windows, take, a rag and whatever spray you use and kind of just really, freshen up your house. The sun's going to come in brighter and it just kind of gets rid of a lot of dust and stuff that has collected from the air conditioning and the heat over winter. All right, another way I prepare some of my plants for spring is I kind of shift them around my house. So in wintertime, the sun is not as bright and direct as it is in the warmer months. So a lot of us move our plants closer to the window, even on windowsills, or I know I have a bunch just lined up against one of my brighter windows just to kind of get as much sun as possible through the wintertime. But we need to make sure that we move these plants back or kind of shift them around. Just because the sun is out longer and it's more intense, then your plant will potentially get burned or, damaged from direct light that they are not used to receiving in the last few months. With that being said, also comes with watering your plants more. They are going to be receiving more sun for longer times of the day, and they are going to be using that water, to produce new leaves and suck up all the nutrients. So keep in mind your watering schedule is going to go back up for wintertime, because in wintertime we slow our watering schedule down, we water less because the plants are almost in kind of like a dormant state where they don't use as much water. So try to keep that in mind. I know I kind of have a hard adjustment when I switch from seasons because we just got in a routine for a while that your plants will need more water. And that brings me to my next tip is it's time to fertilize. So, fertilizing is kind of like a tricky thing, I feel like, or it can seem like kind of intimidating, but I found this Alaskan fish fertilizer. Again, I'll link all this stuff in the description below, but I also set aside jugs of water to kind of evaporate some of the chemicals in my tap water, depending on where you are, and that's what I water my plants with. So every time I actually water my plants, I put a little bit of this fish fertilizer in it. There's, description on the back of details of how much you should put into it. I kind of half it, especially in the beginning of the season, because it would kind of be a shock to your plants, but this is a very natural fertilizer compared to some of the more chemical ones like a Miracle Grow or something like that, that can actually burn your plant roots a lot easier. I will say it is very stinky because it is fish. So again, like with the neem oil, you can do it outside, but I don't. I guess when I dilute it with water, it's not that bad, but I mean, it's not a pleasant smell in any sort of sense. There are a lot of questions of like how often I should fertilize and how much and all that sort of stuff. And my kind of rule of thumb is that I try to do is fertilize a little bit every single time I water. Plants need nutrients just like we do, and if they've been sitting in the same soil for a while, or a lot of soils that come from, or a lot of plants that come from nurseries have like a time release fertilizer in there, but again, we don't know how long that these plants have actually been sitting in these pots and how long the fertilizer has been there. So you'll need to revive your plant with the nutrients that they need. And there's also many other organic ways, like if you have a compost, that is a great way to fertilize your plants. And I've also gotten into this year buying worm castings and sprinkling a little on top. Again, that's very organic, and you just sprinkle a little bit on top of your plants, and every single time you water, it kind of just filters down through the soil. So it's getting nutrients that way as well. And another thing that I do for spring with my plants is I actually move some of my plants outside. So there is a way to do this, and even if you're getting bright light in your house, it is still not as bright as the sun directly outside. Even in shade outdoors, that light is still brighter than your light indoors. So keep that in mind when you put a plant outside, and kind of slowly transition it into full sun or part sun or shade or something like that, because it can, again, either burn your leaves or kind of put the plant into shock. So I have some hanging plants that I put outside, like pothos ivy. The Trandescantia is also very good to be outside because it can handle really high light. And I have hanging pots outside, so that's why I'm mentioning hanging stuff. But I have like a string of dolphins that I put outside because, again, you know, succulent type and cactus type can handle a higher light. But I also make sure that it's not sitting in the scorching sun all day long. They're on my front porch, so they get that morning sun, and then shade afternoon, so they kind of get the gentle morning sun and then the shade in the afternoon. Another great thing about spring in most places, especially where I live, again, because I live in the southeast, is the humidity levels are gonna go up. So might be different, and if you live in a desert. I don't know what it's like to live in a desert because I've only lived in a state that has ridiculous humidity, but I notice, again, I have a humidity thermometer, that the humidity in my house goes up, which is great because in the wintertime it goes way down because we have the heat on and it's a drier season. So keep that in mind as well when you're watering. So even though the plants will be using more water throughout the spring season, the humidity is also higher. And that can kind of create, I know sometimes in the spring and summertime I do get like a layer of this weird mold, and a great solution for that is you actually just sprinkle cinnamon powder on it. And again, it's all natural, so it's not going to hurt your plant, and you sprinkle it on and then it eventually kills all the mold. So the last thing that I kind of do to get my plants ready for spring, you know, we talked about fertilizing, we talked about cleaning your leaves, repotting if necessary, moving your plants outdoors, and kind of just your watering schedule is going to change. I also just clean my shelves that they're on, or clean the area that they're on. It kind of goes hand in hand with like cleaning your leaves and everything like that. But I think sometimes we forget that the surfaces can get really dusty as well, where, you know, pests could potentially hide in that spot. Or it just kind of goes along with the whole spring cleaning of just keeping their area fresh, and it will just make everything feel better, I think. Is, you know, just dust free. And one of my favorite things about spring is going plant shopping. I've done a little bit of plant shopping already because the nurseries are bringing in the new plants, and I love seeing what like the trends are going to be this year, or kind of the variety that they have. But make sure that you have the space for it and you're not like overwhelming yourself. Alright guys, that's all the tips that I have on preparing your house and your plants for your house plants for spring. You know, just have fun with it, and, you know, take your time of repotting, and make sure that you stay tuned for a future video of repotting. Again, if you have any questions, leave them in the comments below and I will address them in that video. And yeah, I hope you guys have a wonderful first week of spring, and happy planting. Bye.